And we are live. This is the Wrap It Up on Blast Raps post-game show. As always, my name is Sheldon Alexander, but today I'm joined by a special guest. If you're watching the video, which if you're watching this live, you should know by now all the places you can find the show live. But I'm joined by my dude, Mr. Brendan Dunlop. Dunlop, what is going on, my dude? How you doing, man?
What's good, man? What's good? Yeah, anyone who's watching the live video probably wonders why you've got a member of Sergio Scariolo's coaching staff on the show with you, because that's how my locks are looking right now. I went through this, Shawn Mendes phase with the curls, and now I'm at this, is this guy like an agent for Benetton Treviso, or does he coach in the Quebec Majors Junior Hockey League? Because that's where I'm at with the locks.
Yes, that's my guy, Mr. Brendan Dunlop. And, we had to switch up the set a little bit here. Make sure you get my guy in the monitor if you're watching the video, because you should know by now. And if you don't, this is the Wrap It Up podcast, the only live and interactive Toronto Raptors post-game show. We stream live after each and every Toronto Raptors game on a bunch of streaming platforms. We got a feed up on Instagram. But if you're on the Instagram feed, really what you should do is go elsewhere. Because on Instagram right now, you can only see my ugly mug, right? That's how that works. But if you want to see the full set, you want to get the full experience of what we do live here, you can go to Twitter at Shell Alexander. You can go to Twitch, which that new page is set up, On Blast Podcast. You can go to YouTube, which is at Sheldon Alexander. Or you can go to, there's one other place I'm forgetting, but I think that's it, if that makes sense. Bottom line is, bunch of different places you can go. See, there's too many places where I don't even know where you can get the podcast now because there's just so much going on and we've just blown up maybe a little too fast. But hey, point is we got you covered. How you doing,
Not
man?
too fast at all, man. I'm good. I'm happy to be here. I think we only had 4 streaming platforms the last time I was on. So now that you've upped it to 7, like, are you on Weibo yet in China? You're doing that over the WhatsApp, the Twitter equivalent in China? Because if you're not there yet, that's obviously the next game.
Not there yet, but working on it. But as mentioned,
I like that it's on Twitch, man. You got to give the kids something else than just watching FIFA and NBA 2K and DJs. Okay, here's some more content for the Twitch.
Twitch is, it's a conversation for another day, but it's an interesting world. I'll just say that much. But
I'm here to talk about whatever, man. So throw it at me.
So as mentioned, we're up on Twitch, we're up on YouTube, we're up on Twitter, and of course on Instagram. Send in your comments and questions live because this is what we do. We talk about the Toronto Raptors after each and every game. And you know what? Let's be honest. After the last, 5 games for sure, it's been tough. It's been tough because this Raptors team has been they've been hit hard with the COVID protocols. They're still missing 5 regulars, including 3 of their starters. And this game they lose 118-95. They lose their 5th straight game to the Chicago Bulls. Raptors now fall to 17-22 on the year. It's tough. 5 in a row, 7 out of 8 losses in a row. Like, what do you make of this recent slide, Dunlop? Let's just start there and just how tough it's been to watch this team where depth would be an issue, but now when you strip that down even more, how tough has it been these last few games watching this team struggle?
There are not too many teams that can hang in games when they're missing 3 of their top 4 guys, especially against a team like the Bulls, who, we're behind them in the standings coming into tonight. But this is a team that's hungry and thinks that they're level with the Raptors. So taking advantage on the second night of a back-to-back, something the Raptors have struggled with all season long. It's tough to watch them, man, because it's like there's not too many teams that can get by, in this moment right now where you're missing the key pieces that they're missing. So I do feel bad for Nick Nurse. And Norm stepped up tonight. I thought was huge. This is maybe that type of game that has everybody yelling, "Pay Norm now! Write the check while it's still cheap." Regardless of the points, I thought he had 32, I think, in the end. But in the first half, I just thought he was hungry. He was really the only kind of drive there, and that's not a shot at Lowry. He was driving too. I saw your somebody was tweeting Game of Thrones graphics like he's fighting an army all by himself.
Yeah.
But I felt like the drive was there from Norm, and Kyle's always going to bring it. But just as a whole, they can't hang with 4 quarters right now.
It was tough in this game. You look at it, and really, it was Norm with 32, Kyle with 20. Boucher tried, 17 off the bench from Boucher. You can't really expect much more from him. But after that, Not much else from many of the Raptors. And you compare that to the Bulls, and Bulls had, okay, everyone that played for the Bulls was in double digits, except for, so they had what, 9 players in double digits. That's
That's
insane,
wild.
first off. But Patrick Williams, their rookie, led the way with 23 points. But the Bulls are a weird team. And of course, Billy Donovan checking in with them this year, giving them a different look, as obviously he's better suited to be coaching a young team like this, right? A young team that
Yeah.
needs to develop, a young team that needs to learn. So that's interesting. But one thing I want to touch back on is you mentioned the back-to-backs for the Raptors. And they showed the graphic during the game. In the last 3 years on the second night of a back-to-back, the Raptors had a record of 26-11, which is first in the NBA. Okay, the last 3 years. This season, they now fall to 1-7, which is 30th in the NBA. And of all the things that we've talked about on this pod and beyond, for this whole season, the biggest thing I keep mentioning is the lack of depth. That was my biggest worry heading into this season, because over the last 3 years, yes, you go back, you lose Kawhi, you lose Danny Green. Those are two vets that ate up a lot of minutes. Then obviously you lose Serge and you lose Marc Gasol heading into this year. Well, you need people that, if as I feel like this is what I'm trying to say here as I round out the point. I feel like so much focus was placed on, can Pascal be the man? Can, Freddie be, take over for Kyle? And we were on that stuff instead of figuring out, well, how do you fill in behind them? Right? Because the depth is a major issue that this team has struggled with. And that to me is the reason why you see this record of 1-7 on the second night of back-to-backs. There's no depth. None at all.
I think they got pinched in a tricky situation because once they let Serge go and Marc Gasol left, there wasn't really those type of replacements available. Mm-hmm. So they may do with Baines, bring Watanabe in for some depth, and it's just not the same bench that was, because you need more out of OG. You need Pascal to be the guy, and he's still struggling to live up to that. So yeah, as far as depth is concerned, they were always held back and had the handcuffed to a certain extent. Throw in COVID protocol, the injuries that they've dealt with this season, and the fact that I can't get away from this, the fact that they're living out of suitcases. Yeah, they might be living in nice new rental properties. They maybe have set themselves up nice for a few months, but it's still not home. It's still not truly a routine, right? And really, you can't take away from that. So I think you compound all the issues that the Raptors are dealing with right now. And to be honest, it's kind of amazing that they're still flirting with a playoff spot. And I think a lot of people would expect them to get their act together with the in the final stretch of the season here and be one of those 8 teams.
Yeah, and you've been on the pod a couple times, and I think one of the things that we always try to do here is have like realistic conversations about this Raptors team and where they're at. And at the start of the year, I took a lot of slack because I was saying, if the Raptors finish in 6th or above this season, it will be a really good accomplishment, just because the depth will be an issue, but also playing all road games would be an issue. So now when I look at this team, and obviously, we're seeing depth is definitely an issue as Aaron Baines continues to just be, I don't even know how to describe the Aaron Baines experience at this point, but depth is such a problem. And as you mentioned, being in Florida, being in Tampa, it's just taken such a toll on this team. And you've seen how fine the line is in terms of having your whole team or missing a piece. And they can't seem to put it all together. But if I look at the biggest problem and the lack of depth, you mentioned not having Serge. Well, you remove Serge and Mark, and now the bulk of those minutes go to Boucher and Aaron Baines. Aaron Baines in this game, let me find this because I wrote this down early. The Raptors in the first quarter, okay? They started off 2 for 12 in the paint to start this game. Aaron Baines, somehow Aaron Baines was 2 for 2 from 3, but 0 for 5 in the paint to start this game. I just don't get it at all. I don't understand Aaron Baines. It's been such a weird experience. People are mad that he starts over Boucher, but I don't really think I like Boucher coming off the bench better. But what have you made of the Aaron Baines experience this season in terms of it being, let's be honest, a disappointment so far?
Yeah, I mean, he's been a flop. They weren't expecting him to be Serge Ibaka. They weren't expecting him to be the DeMarre Carroll they acquired, but they wanted him to at least contribute like the DeMar Carroll that they got, and he hasn't even done that, right? So really, it's hard to come off of that, man. That's all I'm seeing right now with Baines.
Here's one thing I want you to pay attention to, and I've been telling the people on the pod this whole season. Watch it how many times one of the first shots in the game for the Raptors is Baines from 3. I don't understand it. And it's like, dude, you're open for a reason. You're open because they're letting you be open. Stop shooting the 3 to start the game. I don't
Well,
get it.
I'm not going to recklessly speculate and say that someone's doing something they shouldn't. But are there props for how many like random threes that there can be now that gambling is legal all across the United States or in a lot more places? Are there how many big man threes? Because I would wonder if maybe someone should look at friends and relatives of Baines and see if that's a prop. Because in soccer, that was always the case with the ball going out of bounds and corner kicks.
Yeah.
Like, why is there so many early corner kicks?
Yeah.
Some people were getting involved in that. So maybe that's an NBA
that's
thing
hilarious.
to watch out for.
I mean, at least that would be an explanation, but whatever. we talk about Baines, and hey, you could tell me anything at this point. I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. We talked about Baines, but his counterpart, Chris Boucher, who 17 points on 7 of 12 shooting on the night, 1 of 5 from 3, not too good for Boucher, but overall, Chris Boucher, I would say, has been one of the biggest surprises or, most consistent Raptors this season. And I would assume for you, like most Raptors fans or people who follow the team, he surpassed expectations. But what do you think of Chris Boucher's development in the role that he's played on this team this season?
It's super impressive. I mean, I think people were expecting him to take a big step this season. He's had to take a considerably bigger step, and I think that he's done that very well. There's still parts of his games are raw. I think that there's some matchups where he's just overmatched, but he's really, I think, growing into a bigger role than anyone ever really would have expected for him. So remove him from the equation this season, and we're not talking about the Raptors flirting with a playoff spot. We're talking about blowing it up completely. Lowry's already gone if you remove him from this season. So I think it's pretty incredible what Chris Boucher has been doing, man. And a lot of people when you talk about Canadian basketball, there's a lot of people that might look over Chris Boucher, but Raptors fans will definitely remind them that he's a part of that key Canadian cog right now, and that's pretty cool.
So we mix things up a little bit here on the pod. Normally, because I'm joined with a guest and I'm happy, so thankful for it. But what we'll do is I'll quickly go through the game, not really because we know what's been going down the last 5, and then we'll take your comments and questions. So please, people, continue to send in your comments and questions wherever you're listening to this or watching this live, whether you're on Twitter, whether you're on YouTube or on Twitch, send in your comments and questions, and I will try to answer them or ask Mr. Dunlop to answer them because he's a lot smarter than I am. But let's go through.
But please throw those at me because you are. Can I just give you some props for how great you are at multitasking here? Because to do the show alone is one thing. To get all the stats, you've seen the tweets, and to be able to respond to these questions, like on an IG live, when it's just me and the questions, I struggle with the questions, man, and keeping up with the comments and reading them. So props to you for being a super pro at that.
Appreciate you, my dude. Appreciate you. But the real blessing is the followers. The followers understand. The people that watch the show, they get it, and they understand what we're trying to do here. And we're just having a conversation. So there's a lot of times where I'll be reading something and I'll just like laugh out loud and catch myself like, oh, I'm supposed to continue talking because if I don't read the comment, then no one knows what I'm. Yeah. Anyways, so
I just assume it's inappropriate. If you're not reading it and you laughing, it's clearly inappropriate, but it made you laugh.
That's fair. It happens. So really, this game, I'm gonna go through it a little like very quickly because let's be honest, it was a blowout. Not as bad as last night's game against the Hornets, but I want to give the Raptors a lot of credit because I thought the way they came out to start this game deserves a lot of credit because Kyle Lowry early on, I tweeted it out. He was trying to control the game, control the pace of the game, get points up early to at least keep the Raptors in it. And how did he do that? Well, my guy was getting to the free throw line very early on. My guy had 5 free throws early. And what does that do? It changes the pace of the game, changes the tempo. He's establishing with the refs that he's being aggressive, going to the basket, but also he's putting up points on the board while not exerting that much energy because he's resting while shooting these free throws. But the problem for the Raps was to close that first quarter. The Bulls close on an 18-8 run. They led 28-22 after one. Raptors shot 24% in the first quarter, but despite that, they were still only down 6 points. And that showed that there was at least room for, if you play defense and you hang around and you hang around, you give yourself a chance. But I'm not going to be on. I'm going to be honest here. Sorry. I was going to say I'm not going to be honest, but I meant I'm going to be honest here for a sec. Reality set in for me, and I don't know what this was like for you, Dunlop, but I'll ask. Reality set in for me in the second quarter when the Raptors lineup they had out there was Kyle Lowry, Paul Watson, Matt Thomas, Utah Watanabe, and Henry Ellingson. That's when reality set in to me that, oh, this is going to be a tough one. But again, I want to give them credit for those guys played hard and they played solid defense. They kept it close. They were still within striking distance. But what did you make from just some of the lineups the Raptors were putting out there and some of the opportunities that were given to some of these guys that, you know, in their normal situations wouldn't be taking off their warm-up suit to check into a game? But what did you make of some of these other guys? Because we talked about Norm, we talked about Kyle, but anyone else kind of stick out to you or that you want to see more from, that they need more, especially with the team they have now?
I mean, prior to getting embarrassed by Anthony Edwards, I thought that Yuta Watanabe was making some real good improvements.
I agree.
And I think that he deserves a few more minutes and a longer run out than maybe he's been getting. But it's tough to look at this team, and think about where they were just 2 seasons ago. And now you're looking at Raptors 905 being rolled out in the second game of a back-to-back. And you talk about the first quarter and what really impressed you. I had that same feeling. I held that same feeling until the Bulls went on a 9-0 run at the very end of the second quarter, because I had thought the Raptors had worked really hard to kind of close that gap. I'm not sure who was kind of on the floor before that run started. It may have been that 5 that you're talking about. But leading up to that 9-0 run that the Bulls went on in the last minute and change, I thought, okay, the Raptors are very much in this game. And then that run alone it's the fatigue of the entire season, particularly this last 5-game stretch. That's why I say that this team just can't hang for 4 quarters like that. And it's unfortunate.
The interesting part of that, and you're totally right about the fatigue, because that 9-0 run actually came when Norm subbed back in. And this is the other part where people don't, breaking down the next level of basketball, right? Which is kind of like the way too inside for most people. But when you're Kyle and Norm in this situation, when you have to carry the majority of the scoring load and you have to guard the other team's best players and you have to get other guys' shots and your own shots, like that's exerting a lot of energy. So when you're talking about fatigue and the run comes when Norm checks back in, we're not really seeing the same Norm, right? Like we're seeing a Norm and Kyle that have to pace themselves throughout the game because they got to save a little something for the end. So they might get beat on a blown defensive assignment that might not occur when the team is at full strength. And that's the real tough part. But you're right, that 9-0 run at the end of that, like just before the end of the first half, Bulls led by 9 at halftime. And let's keep it a buck. The game was over very early in the third quarter. The bench of the Bulls, which again, is the Bulls bench really that good, or is it the Bulls bench playing against the Raptors deep bench that makes the Bulls bench look good? But Wendell Carter, Kobe White, Otto Porter, those guys were just getting buckets way too easy. And then by the time the fourth quarter rolled around and Denzel Valentine is shooting heat checks, I mean, that's when
he was feeling it. He was feeling it. Like there's a guy who's super motivated because his alma mater just sneaked in by the skin of their teeth. And the first 4, Michigan State in the first 4. Like, I can't believe we're looking at a tournament without Duke and Kentucky and in the middle of a pandemic. And I guess it's just fitting that, of course, Michigan State would just barely get in, and it's in the first 4. Here we go, March Madness. What a wild time, man.
Crazy.
Denzel, it was cool to see Denzel Valentine kind of have a moment, just because, full disclosure, I'm totally biased. I'm a Michigan State Spartans fan, diehard. So I think he gets a lot of flack as an NBA player, and he's never really kind of reached the potential of maybe his 14th draft selection, what people expected. But I think sometimes people are too harsh on him, and tonight he may have shut up a few people.
I'm fully aware that Michigan State is your squad. I was just going to let you ride. I wasn't going to call you out on it. I was going to let you ride, talk your shit while you can.
full disclosure to the people out there, because sooner or later there's going to be some Portuguese guy drafted, and he's going to be the best player in the world in my eyes, right?
How
Move
quickly
over
would
Shea
you
and RJ. Now I'm talking about Nuno Espirito Santo, 7'2".
how quickly would it take you to get that guy's jersey if the Raptors drafted a Portuguese guy?
Oh my God! And are you kidding me? In a minute, I would. I'd be going to the print shop right after the media availability.
Amazing. I got a comment here from someone we both know and love. Mr. LT checks in on Twitter. First thing he says is Dunlop, all caps, then says, I got Drive to Survive S3 in my queue right now.
Yes.
Okay. But in relation to the game, he says, no benchmans on the Raps. Best not complain about playing time ever again, which is very true. And the bench did struggle. And I mentioned those guys, the run that the Bulls had early in that third quarter, but I stopped charting it. But early in that third quarter, the Bulls had a 31-11 lead in terms of bench points. And again, you're talking the Bulls bench against the Raptors deep bench, because now the Raptors bench are starters. So it's not really a fair fight, but this is, again, the season that we're having because of the situation with COVID. And so you just got to ride it out. And the hope is, they talked about this during the broadcast, Raptors next game is in Detroit.
Yep.
That's on Wednesday. They were going to go right to Detroit, but instead they're going to fly back to Tampa. And the hope is maybe you might be able to get maybe some of those players that are out are able to come off of the health and safety protocol list, and maybe some of the coaches as well. And then you add them to the rest of the team as you move to Detroit and hope to end this losing streak. But until then, this is the squad we got. And the chat on YouTube is ablaze. So I will get there and get some questions. Again, the people who are on Instagram, if you click the link in bio, that'll send you to YouTube. You can send your comments, questions there, and you can see and hear Mr. Dunlop properly. Because right now on Instagram, I'm pretty sure you're struggling to hear him. Better audio, better quality. Everything is just better. Click the link in bio. But on YouTube, first comment says, I guess every time we play until we get our guys back, it's going to be an L. This is really bad, making the Lowry trade more of a reality with us losing so much. Shake my head. So the Lowry trade talk, because I've been putting this off for a while, because I don't want to be, I know it's going to really heat up as we get closer to the deadline. I don't want to be repeating myself on every pod, but now that I'm here with someone live that, the people can hear other takes, let's have a bit of a discussion here about this Kyle Lowry, what to do with said Kyle Lowry as we get closer to the deadline. Raptors currently are, what's their record right now? 17-22.
17. Yeah.
They are in 10th or 11th place, depending on what happens to the games tonight.
Still pretty tight, though. You can swing quick.
You can swing quick. Yeah, you are, 3 games out of 6th. So you can swing it pretty quickly once you get your team back. But I'm going to ask you, what are your thoughts on what should happen with Kyle Lowry from now until the deadline? Should they trade Kyle?
I think Masai should be looking to trade him. It's unfortunate that I don't think they're going to get the return that they deserve. I think that Kyle Lowry will go to a team, and I would assume that Masai would be looking to trade him to a team that is contending, and he would have an immediate impact to get this contending team, over the hump. Does that mean that they're going to be able to stop LeBron or the Nets, depending on which conference he's traded to? No, it doesn't mean that, but they're certainly going to have a much better chance because he's going to walk right into a team, as driven as ever, and elevate a challenging team that's already close and already feeling themselves a little bit. He's going to be the piece that team really wants. So it be that the Sixers potentially. I mean, I don't know what the Sixers would want to part with. I don't know what the Raptors would want.
Yeah.
Same goes for the Clippers. I don't know if I heard a great chat. Mark Spears was talking about how great a fit the Clippers would be, and I hadn't really thought about it. And to be honest, if he does leave, that's exactly where I want to see him go. I want to see him go reunite with Serge and Kawhi and look to push them over the edge, and they might be able to do it, man.
See, what's so funny about that? I'm with you. I would love to see that happen as well. But I feel like we're in the minority in terms of Raptors fans. I feel a lot of Raptors fans, if they're honest with themselves, they have a serious hate on for the Clippers. And
Of course.
like, I get it. I understand it. They stopped Kawhi for a whole year, blatantly tampered for a whole year in their recruiting of trying to get Kawhi, and it worked, right? Because he ended up signing there. And obviously, Serge left the Raptors to join the Clippers as well. So I don't know. Like, it would take a lot for the Raptors, I think, to trade Kyle Lowry there as well. The Clippers also don't have assets, so the most likely scenario would be it'd have to be a 3-team deal in which the Raptors would be retaining assets from elsewhere. So that one's tough. That would be a dream scenario because, yeah, then we'd be all in cheering for the Clippers to beat LeBron, right? That'd be so much fun. The Philly thing is the most interesting to me because it's a place where I could see Kyle being okay with, like him saying, yeah, I'd go to Philly because obviously hometown and all that stuff. But also they have some interesting assets because the NBA is weird. And I'm not going to go too deep into the salary cap and all that because that's boring. But
You don't want to talk escrow right now and wrap it up?
But basically, to make a trade, you need the contracts to add up, right? So you'd have to take back like Danny Green and Mike Scott probably to have the contracts be close. But really, you'd be making that trade. You'd be hoping to get some combination of draft picks, Thibault, and Maxey. If you're telling me we could get Maxey and a first round pick, I'm in on that deal. If I'm Masai Ujiri, I understand why they might not do the trade, but at the end of the day, I think it really just comes down to Kyle Lowry. And I think they've said as much, but they're going to basically ask Kyle, what does he want to do? And it depends on where the Raps are in the standings. That's what makes it really tough because you want to get assets back for him, obviously, but at the same time, for what he's meant to your franchise over the last 7 years, and I'm just talking about the winning of the last 7 years, like that's incredible. And I think you owe it to him to go out how he wants to go out. If he wants to be traded to a contender, cool. If he wants to ride it out and make the playoffs with this team, also cool. I'm okay with that. The thing that I talked to you beforehand, though, that I said we might bring up is what to do with Norm Powell. That is an interesting conversation to me that's not getting enough buzz. And just so people are aware of the scenario, Norm has a player option for next season, right? That player option is worth, I think, $11.6 million. That means Norm could just sign that option and he's back making 11 mil for next season. Or the more likely scenario is he opts out of that deal and becomes a free agent. So my question to you now, Mr. Dunlop, as I read off the current stats of tonight's game in which the Raptors did lose, they did lose again, but we know that Norman Powell was the team leader in scoring yet again with 32 points. And if I tell you that Norm over his last 10 games is averaging over 24 points per game, my question to you right now is what should they do with Norm Powell?
I think a lot of people have picked up new mental wellness habits in lockdown, and I wonder if diary writing is one of them for Norm Powell.
Okay.
Because if it was, he's definitely writing on the bus before they even get back to the hotel to the plane. He's definitely writing, "I am opting out." And today's date and the stat line that you just read out, he's writing down. I think the Raptors are in a really tricky situation, man, because I would have thought leading up to kind of this stretch that he is a player who you could afford to part with. Mm-hmm. And he's a player who you might not be able to replace immediately, but I think that they would be able to replace kind of in a team setting. This is the problem with Norm, is that he's very inconsistent.
Yeah.
For nights like tonight, and as I said, as driven and as hungry as he seemed, as much of an engine as he was in that first half, you're just not getting that for 48 minutes a night with Norm. So I have a tough time looking at my checkbook and trying to balance how I'm going to pay him more than 11 million. But really the situation that they're in right now, I do feel like they feel that they gotta give him the money. They gotta keep him around, and maybe you can work on some type of bridge deal. He's been a great soldier for the team. He's definitely been a great Raptor who I think deserves to be treated well. But I'm not writing a check for 18 million, not for Norm.
Well, the other thing that's interesting is, and it's happening in some other sports, because I think I saw someone report, it was an NFL reporter, talk about how a receiver reached out saying that their agent is fully aware they're only going to sign a 1 year deal. And that's because of the situation we're in, which is a pandemic, and you have a bunch of owners crying poor. So they're going to try to reset the market and pay people less. We don't know
Yeah.
what that's going to look like in the NBA at all, but you mentioned the 18 mil. And for context purposes, let's remind ourselves OG Anunoby just re signed. And so OG's making 16. Then that goes to 17, then 18, then 19 mil in the 2024-2025 season. If I'm Norm Powell, don't I have to make more than OG?
If you're Norm Powell, you're definitely asking for more.
If I'm Norm's
100%.
agent, right? So this is where it gets interesting. And to me, I'm already thinking that Kyle Lowry is probably gone, right? Like I'm assuming that he might be priced out unless there's no other suitors for him and he takes a huge pay cut, right? But to me, the Norm thing is way more interesting. What do they do with Norm? Because if this was a cutthroat business, which we know this is not how the Raptors operate, you could make an argument for trying to trade Kyle and Norm if they're far out of the playoffs and just trying to retain some form of assets instead of the likely scenario of both of them just leaving for nothing. So it's super interesting to see. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen, but this deadline is going to be interesting for sure.
What do you want to see at the deadline? I don't see them looking to trade Norm. I think that they're going to end up in a situation where they leave it too late, to be honest. I think that maybe they would entertain an offer, but I don't know what phone call is coming in for Norm that they think we got to do this. Who is it? Is it the Knicks? Is it that tier below the Sixers and the Clippers that are looking to build? I don't know if that's a phone call that's happening. If it is, then I would listen to it. But as I said, I feel as though the Raptors are in a spot where it's too unpredictable to name a replacement for him. So that's why I think they do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really tough to see. And I know it's tough for Raptors fans to look beyond what's happening right now because it seems like, everything's closing in on the Raps and, you're having talks about tanking and March Madness is about to start. So you're about to hear people talk about Cade Cunningham a lot over the next weekend for sure. So a lot of talk going on, but this is where I urge people to relax just a little bit. And as you mentioned earlier, you hope that everyone's healthy. You hope that everyone comes back, and you know that your team's not going to be as bad as they've shown the last few games when everyone comes back. So you just hope people are healthy and things will take care of themselves. But I got some updates here because Kyle Lowry, as we know, at the end of that game got ejected on a weird play, which I don't know. Like
It was so weird.
I didn't understand it. He threw the ball down the court at a ref, but the ref teed him up. It was weird. I didn't get it. But here's what Kyle said after the game. He said, "I don't ever talk about the officials, but this is crazy. I'm going to be very smart about what I say, but I just want consistency on both ends. I really didn't do anything, but hey, sometimes egos get bigger." Interesting.
Well, Jack said it on the broadcast, and I also want to ask you what music you think Jack golfs to, because he also mentioned that he's got to a point in his life where he has to have a little bit of music while he's out there golfing, so we can discuss what the playlist is.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any Hove. Well, there might be some Drizzy on there, but I don't think he made it himself.
The amount of times that Drake's been on the broadcast, probably Drake slides into Jack's playlist maybe once or twice for sure. Another quote here that I found interesting because it leads into a comment someone wrote in. But Nick Nurse in his postgame said, "It's a little frustrating tonight, I think. You're giving a lot of guys shots and they miss a few and you try somebody else and they get the same looks and they don't do any better. So it was a tough night for us on that front and it's too bad." Ooh, that's really tough. And the reason I brought that up is because if I could find the comment now, which of course now that I brought it up, I won't be able to find it because there's so many here on YouTube. But here we are. Aisha says, "These are rare opportunities for some of our bench players to shine, and they just don't show up. I feel for Kyle. He creates all those open shots for others. Nobody scores." Oh, jeez.
It's tough to be Kyle Lowry, man.
Yeah.
It's tough to be Kyle Lowry. Yeah, definitely right there. I wish that some of these guys off the bench would have had a better night tonight, so that we're talking about a closer game for one, and maybe that Nick Nurse can be comforted going into the next game and looking at the schedule. But if you compare the good feeling that Billy Donovan has versus the bad feeling that Nick Nurse has tonight, as weird as that finish was, I think, to be honest, it's probably the ejection that will have them talking more so than the rest of the game, really, because I think Billy Donovan has much more reason to feel good than Nick Nurse to feel bad. This isn't the full team. The second night of a back-to-back, there were some bright spots there in that first half. So really, it's you want more from the bench. They just haven't been getting it. But you mentioned hope before. You just got to hope that everybody gets healthy. And I've been beaten over the head with that commercial that hope is not a plan. But I'm with you. I just hope that everybody's healthy. Okay, I don't want to be reminded of that commercial anymore.
Right. Dante says, "Dang, I missed the game. Kind of glad I missed this and the last game. Very depressing. I mean, that's really last night's game was bad because it was a blowout from the get-go, and I'm normally not a silver linings guy. I'm not a moral victories guy. But when you're talking about the team that the Raps are putting out there, it was at least better to see a lot more of a fight put up in tonight's game than last night's game. Last night's game was just a blowout from tip, and so to come out on a second night of a back-to-back and at least give the Bulls a go, you got to walk away and say, all right, at least you take a lot more from this game and say, well, we missed a lot of wide open looks. That's on us. That's our problem. We can fix, right?
They dug in tonight in a way that they seemed incapable of doing last night.
Yeah.
But for your mans who missed the game, what's with the 9 o'clock Eastern tip-offs on a Sunday night? Okay, who are you catering to in Chicago at 8 o'clock? Did they not move the clocks forward? Was it 7 in the Central Time Zone? Like, what happened?
That's what I was wondering. I was like, is it 9 o'clock because the time went back, and so the Raps are traveling in on the second night of a back-to-back? Is that why they moved it an hour later? Maybe. I don't know. But I did find it weird.
I don't know how the local TV system works. Someone ask Swirsky to
the
Chuckster and Chuck to tell us why. He probably understands the scheduling. But there's got to be some states that don't move the clocks, right? Because I think Saskatchewan never moves the clock.
There is a time zone, and I don't know what it is, but there is a time zone that doesn't move the clocks. That is correct. I do know that much. Don't know where it is, but I know that's a thing. Someone will be able to tell. I bet someone will tell us in the chat for sure.
Yeah. Someone from Saskatchewan on Twitch right now, please tell us.
Elijah says, I hope we play mad when we see Detroit. Revenge game. As the Raptors obviously lost to Detroit a couple weeks back. Or not even a couple weeks back. Maybe a week. It just seems like a long time ago. Because, I mean, it's been a lot going on in Raptors land.
It does feel ages ago. But also, too, like, do Raptors fans have any sympathy for the Pistons? I mean, it's nice to kind of have that rivalry. Back when we were able to go to games, it was a quick trip. I think there are a lot of people that wanted to see Dwayne Casey do well. Yeah. There's a lot of people that may have liked Stan Van Gundy and Blake Griffin at one point. But I just think the NBA would be in a better place if the Pistons were good.
I fully admit my bias with Detroit. Like, I want them to succeed. I like Dwayne Casey. I think Dwayne Casey is a good dude. He's good people's. I think, whatever the credit is that he gets for the Raptors' success and like eventually winning the championship, it's not enough because like he really changed the culture in this city. That whole pound the rock stuff and like bringing it defensive intensity night in, night out, all that stuff, like when it was a tough time and tough years, and he really did change the culture of this team. And was it enough? Was he able to get them over the hump? No. If you ask him, would he probably have liked to have a chance at the Eastern Conference when there's no LeBron and he has Kawhi Leonard? Probably, right? He'd probably like that opportunity, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. And so to watch him struggle in Detroit is tough, but I do hope they figure some things out when they're not playing the Raptors.
Fair. I'm with you, man. I feel like a lot of people listening would agree with that too.
This comment, and there's a bunch of people saying this in the chat, and I'm only bringing it up to remind people who might not be familiar, but someone says they should cancel the games until the players come back from the COVID list. If it was the Lakers or the top three teams, they would have canceled it. I'm only reading this comment to dispel this myth that this is some like Raptors only issue. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid missed the first game back from the All-Star break. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid missed games earlier on this season for the exact same reason that Pascal and Fred are out now. Jason Tatum missed about a week or two with the same thing. Like Jason Tatum, which doesn't get a lot of play, but Jason Tatum came back and a week ago was doing interviews in which he was talking about having trouble still running up and down the court and breathing properly. And that's after he missed a bunch of time and then came back. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard missed a full week of games for the Clippers that's when Reggie Jackson was everyone's favorite fantasy pickup because Paul George and Kawhi were out for a week because they were on the COVID list. My point is why I'm bringing this up. This isn't a Toronto only thing, and there's been a bunch of teams, if not the majority of the teams in the league, have had at least a week when they're dealing with this issue. And for Raptors fans, what I would urge you to do is maybe think about it from the side of at least it came about when there was a week off for the All-Star game. Because how many more games would it have been if there wasn't a week off for the All-Star game? So the first thing, again, that I always bring up is I hope everybody is safe. I hope everyone comes back healthy and okay. But just know this is not a Raptors only problem. This is something that's gone on across the entire league. Jimmy Butler missed like about a month for the Miami Heat. The Heat had games where they missed a bunch of players as well. And if you look at the standings, Jimmy Butler's been back, and all of a sudden the Miami Heat are back in business. They're in like 5th place right now. So Raptors fans, I'm just here to remind you, paint the other side of the picture, give you the full scope. This is not a Raptors only issue. This is something that is happening to a bunch of teams throughout the league.
Attitude of gratitude, Raptors fans. It could be way worse.
Yeah, definitely. But Mr. Dunlop, anything else you want to bring up about this game or just in general, or how you doing, man? This is good. This has been fun. I like this.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this, man. Thanks for opening up and let me talk some basketball with you. We're both watching the game and we're hoping for a much better outing than last night. So at least we got that. But yeah, it's been rough to watch the Raptors struggle, man. And I think a lot of people would say that as interested and as engaged as they want to be, they're a bit less, and maybe that means that you miss a game here or there. Maybe it means you're not catching all 4 quarters. You open Score Mobile and see the Raptors are being blown out, and you don't turn the end of the game on. So it's weird that the Raptors have kind of become that team again. I think for a lot of people, and who knows what the actual ratings in the end will prove to be. For the season. It's just such a strange, weird season. But as far as the broadcast goes, one of the notes I made, shout out to your girl, Glow Girl Smile, for making the broadcast in the fan selection.
I did see that.
Tangerine fan angle there. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, man, I just enjoy talking basketball and talking sports with you, man. This is cool.
Well, as you know, you have an open invite whenever you want. Send over the message, and I will make it work. I'll figure it out, and we will get you on the pod anytime you want. Open invite for sure. Thank you for tuning in and joining me, Mr. Dunlop. And of course, tell the people where they can follow you on the social medias if they want to comment and, get some of your witty banter or online content.
My witty banter, yes, and my clever sports TikTok. I'm trying to change the sports TikTok game. There's kind of 2 layers. There's hot takes, these young Twitchers trying to be a new Sid Sixero, and then there's some sports comedy. There's actually some really clever and creative stuff on there. So I'm Brendan_Dunlop on all the socials, including Clubhouse. So yeah, give me a follow and connect. I got a lot going on.
Definitely follow Mr. Dunlop for sure. I highly recommend it. One of my dudes and one of the good guys in this industry for sure. So really appreciate him tuning in and joining us here on this pod. And as always, I really appreciate everyone else, all you viewers watching us live, whether you're rocking out with us on Instagram or Twitter or Twitch or YouTube. Really appreciate all the comments and questions, because without you guys, I wouldn't be here doing this podcast. It's just that simple. So greatly appreciate you guys joining in on the conversation, especially times like this where it's tough, right? We try to create a safe space for Raptors fans to talk and air your grievances and discuss what's going on. And there's one last comment I'll read here from an account that's titled Let's Talk Raps. Oh, no, sorry. It's from Dante. Dante says, Sheldon is a voice of reason that prevents us all from jumping out the window. You are appreciated. Listen, okay.
I agree with Dante, man.
Listen,
I agree.
all I try to do is, because I start from the point of what were your expectations coming into the season? And so you're never really riding too high, getting too low. You just got to ride it out and know there's an explanation for why the team struggles. You know that you have a pretty solid team that is going to be in the thick of the playoff race, and that's where they are. They got off to a tough start, adjusting, as you mentioned, Dunlop, to a season where you're playing in Tampa. Your practice court is a gym like ballroom or a hotel ballroom that they converted into a practice facility for you. So there's so much
to golf all the time. There's so many distractions down there. You can order food from wherever you want.
right?
You can sit inside. Yeah, I know.
So much going on. And so the thing is, it was like they got off to a tough start. Okay, you can expect that. They figured things out. They started making a bit of a run, and then they got hit with this situation with the COVID protocols. And that's just the nature of what this season is. So you hope everyone will be back, and then they'll be right back in the thick of the playoff race. That's it. In the meantime, between time though, we'll be here discussing everything else that happens after each and every game. Again, we're live after every Toronto Raptors game, streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube. Like and subscribe in all those places. And of course, if you ever miss the podcast, we got you covered wherever you get your podcasts, which is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and the aforementioned YouTube. Please like and subscribe. That's how we keep this podcast moving. Share it, tell your friends, all that fun stuff. And you never know, you get surprises like Mr. Brendan Dunlop blessing us with his presence here. You just never know who will show up or what will be going on here. But I thank you guys for always being here and joining in with me on this the Wrap It Up podcast. My name is Sheldon Alexander. As I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is the Wrap It Up on Blast Raps post-game show. As always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.